recognizes her. She's an actor, singer, and a lyricist, and to be honest, somebody who dons more hats than three. Whichever be the Race Gurram, she delivers a hit on the D-Day. Sorry, I was trying to get all your filmography right. She's like,
you have kids?
Rishabh, don't do this.
You have kids?
No, listen, I look.
You are ready. Your dad jokes are ready.
Acha, my dad jokes. Acha, thanks. No, and whilst one can go on about a filmography, for someone who comes from an acclaimed lineage to essentially be able to make your mark on your own isn't an easy thing. And she honestly is a hero for all the right reasons. And today I am thrilled, delighted, humbled and honored to be able to welcome you to the I.I.M.U.N platform. Thank you very much for doing this.
Thank you.
An appropriate name for an appropriate series, Shruti Haasan.
Thank you so much for having me. It's truly my pleasure.
And also with a few dad jokes. But
yes, of course. What's life without your dad jokes?
Okay, but let me start with asking you the first question. The series is called I.I.M.U.N's Role Models, and therefore I must ask you this, saying, you know, the people who are going to be watching this are school students, and these school students are very impressionable. The fact that role models play such a big part in their life, and I'm sure a role model has played a big part in your life as well. What are the parameters that young people should choose when you're choosing your role model? Like, what are the parameters that one needs to keep in mind?
I don't know if there's like a checklist as such or a parameter checklist. I think that I think for me personally, I'm always looking for inspiration in all its forms, not just artistic. So I think a role model is anyone who resonates with what your dream can be, or a role model is someone who leads by example. But I personally never like being called a role model because I feel like, okay, that's a lot. That's a lot. And I don't say this person is my role model. I'd rather use the word like inspiring. We also change in our expectations of who we wanted to be also changes. And then I think the truest role models in that sense are then the ones that stand the test of time for us.
No, super. So you're basically saying that don't venerate somebody to the position of a role model, but rather be inspired by people. And therefore, to that end, if I may ask you then, who was your inspiration? Who was your inspiration when you were growing up?
So very many people, so many women around me, so many wonderful teachers I had. In my own home, my mom, she's an extremely independent and a person with, a level of courage that, I hadn't seen when I was that young. And I would say so many women that I've come across through my work. Also wonderful men that I've come across that have taught me valuable lessons. Children sometimes, because they are the most honest and amazing at saying what they feel. So I have many role models. In music, I have tons of role models who, and mostly it's about people who have very bravely stayed true to themselves. I think that's a common thread, whether it's music or acting or cinema or in life, is I really resonate with people who are unapologetic about being themselves.
And you have been, if I may, an inspiration for a lot of people to be unapologetic. You essentially have broken stereotypes. You've gone ahead with that goth look since I can possibly remember, since the early 2000s. You've essentially, and to that end, in a way, you've normalized things that don't seem very normal for people in terms of imbibing and doing. And to that end, is it difficult? Say, for example, when you went ahead with your whole goth look and the fact that you yet carried through, is it difficult to be accepted in society? And to that end, how did you do it?
I think accepted in society is a very broad and dangerous term, okay, because it means very many things. I think to be of value to certain sections of society is more achievable and realistic, being a musician or an artist who focuses on expressing personality, it was just a natural extension and didn't seem that difficult. But when I joined the film industry, there were different parameters that needed to be met, you know, like you have to be, you know, there was, especially at the time I started, you have to fit a mold or be more neutral so you can play characters. And things have changed now, which is great, especially for someone like me. And also, I think somewhere around hitting my 30th year, I was like, okay, this is just who I'm going to be. This is who I enjoy being, and that's it. So it's not much more complicated than that. It's not like I shall stand against society. It wasn't. It wasn't that dramatic.
So, and also the message is that don't fight society. Try to please yourself, and in that you will please a section of society any which way. Is that the message?
You are
that
already a
perhaps
part of society, whether society likes it or not. By simply living within that framework, if you're not someone who lives with the bears and the wolves in the mountains on your own and eats canned potted soup, you are like a part of society. So you will find your ilk and you will find your community that resonates with what you do. It's just the way human beings have always kind of gravitated towards each other.
No, that's a way of looking at things, and that's also a very positive way of looking at things, especially given the fact, like I said, that students are going to watch this, and students are in high school, and there's so much of peer pressure. The idea to conform with a particular set of standards, and the fact that you've actually set new standards, and you're saying that you will find your ilk. So, irrespective of whatever you hope to achieve, just go ahead and achieve it, and I'm sure you'll find people who will back you. But you've been also a lot, you know, you've been a great inspiration to a lot of people and young women, and now you've actually come out with a song which is She's a Hero, and it's a very powerful song celebrating women. Now, can you tell me the thought behind, and I really liked the fact that you included young girls from an NGO as a part of the song. I don't see that very often in music videos. What was the thought behind including young girls who were from an NGO as a part of the song that you were making?
So the first part of your question was basically I write quite autobiographically, like from my experience of a particular instance. But as I was sitting at the piano, I felt like I wanted to write about something that resonated with me, but had a larger diaphragm in terms of like reaching to more people. And the honest and most resonating topic for me in that was about women. And I wanted to write it in a way that had room for many women to plug their experiences into. Then my partner had an art exhibit, and he decided to have a bunch of us perform at his art exhibit. And so Shantanu asked myself, MC Altaf and Karan Kanchan to kind of get together and perform. And we were like, yeah. So me and my producer Karan Parekh had already worked on this rough track. And then Altaf was like, I would love to rap on this, which was already exciting because see, the intention came from him first, कि मुझे इसके बारे में rap करना है. And when he put his words in, it was amazing because it was from a point of view which was completely different to mine, and from a male gaze with reverence for women, which was so important to me as a girl, and so important, I think, even as a message for younger women, that there are the good men that will help us, not just, you know, the sisterhood, but a brotherhood that will also be allies to us. I think that was important. Coming to the very special and wonderful girls in the video, I knew that the video had to have the past, the present, and the future. So the past is, you know, our mothers, sisters, family members who like project their love and their hopes onto us, which is why we use the projector. I was representing the present for lack of another person singing in the video. And then the future is what is hope, is a dream for each and every one of us at every age. And the future is represented by these girls. So I thought, should I get my friends' kids? Should we get kids we know? Then we were thinking, should we get child actors? And then Mansi Mehta was my publicist. Suggested that maybe I can ask Shiksha Seva if they'd be open to this, because they do amazing work with, especially in the field of education and ensuring that these girls have a fighting chance at a wonderful future through education. I said, you know, would they be up for it? And they were, touch wood. And these girls were just magical. Not only that, they created all of the artwork on the walls that you see throughout the video. So we got them to artistically collaborate truly in its truest spirit. And we're truly honored that they could be a part of it. It's the most special thing about the whole experience.
No, I'm delighted, though the young girls at I.I.M.U.N are going to be very jealous, saying, and they're going to be telling me to tell Mansi, saying, please recommend us as well. But I'm sure that must have been a very fulfilling experience for the young girls in order to be able to be a part of something like this. And I'm sure
I hope that it's a wonderful core memory for them, because they were all so young. I hope that they'll always remember this as a day that they ate nice sandwiches and painted on walls, which we're mostly not allowed to do.
No, no, and when you are young, you're also very impressionable, Shruti, and that's something that you mentioned. You just said that this is something that you hope that they'd carry back, and therefore I must ask you this question: say, young people who look up to you and who look up to all of you wonderful people in cinema, sometimes see your lives and say that yes, they broke the stereotypes, but at the end of the day, and your song also celebrates women in a way. But at the end of the day, the brutal reality is that 70% of our country yet lives in its villages. The top 20% of families in India have barely 9 years of education that is given to a girl child. But the even more surprising statistic is that the bottom 20% have no education for girls and for women. Now the thing is,
and also very limited access to sanitization, healthcare, and all of that, the whole gamut. Yeah.
And which is why when they are oppressed, when they're actually oppressed in their own houses, they're not allowed to do certain things. They of course look at your Instagram, your tweets, the fact that all of you are doing such wonderful things. But how can they at 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, at those adolescent years, how can they break free from the shackles of what would be a very authoritarian, regressive society that they live in?
See, it's a very multi-layered and complex question. Earlier today, I was speaking and saying, when I speak of, say, feminism or women's rights, I'm speaking from a position of privilege, and I never take that for granted. I am speaking about things like gender pay gap and those things which all of you young ladies will face. And then, you realize the truth is, I have a safe environment, I have an education, I have financial independence. This is all privilege because, like you said, there is a whole chunk of the women's country, the country's women, the young women, who kind of have a bleak future. And the only way I truly believe is to empower women is through education and achieving financial independence. And there are lots of NGOs and there are lots of organizations working, because sometimes when you can't change the environment, you have to work doubly hard to remove them from the environment and ensure that they can stay out of that abusive, toxic, or archaic environment. And we all leave home in a certain sense, after a particular age, because we go to study or we go to work, even if we live with our parents, do you know what I mean? But they kind of may get stuck into that system. So I think there's a lot of organizations doing amazing work. And I would say, whether you're privileged or not so privileged, I will always say education and financial independence is the thing that will truly empower everyone, and in particular, women.
Right, and I think you mentioned something that was very, very important. And if I may, you said that if you can't get them to come along with you, then make sure that they are not in your path, and therefore, in a small way, try to get away from that archaic, regressive environment. And therefore, And therefore, it's so very important that when there is some hardship that they are facing, which they know is wrong, and that they're being made to being made to go through that entire hardship just because of their gender, that they actually voice that and they actually leave that environment and look to places and people which give them hope. And is that the message am I correctly reading what you're trying to say?
I think that, and also if you and I are having this conversation in a completely different environment, speaking about this and bringing about awareness, and then in our own ways helping these organizations, be it financially or by speaking about it or raising awareness, this does offer the opportunity for them to leave that environment.
No, absolutely, and I'm glad you passed on this message because this is going to go to, like I said, very many people, and therefore I'm most excited that you mentioned this. But to that end, you yourself have faced your own challenges, your own hardships, and She's a Hero is a song that celebrates women who've gone through those hardships and then come out successful. If it's okay and if you're comfortable with, could you share and narrate a couple of hardships that you've gone through, which you'd be comfortable sharing with young people?
I think that I have spoken about this before, and I'm a huge advocate of mental health. And for many years, I suffered from anxiety disorder, and it was undiagnosed, and I didn't know what it was. And I felt really inadequate, especially, say, before an exam or before a stage performance. I had physically debilitating symptoms that would make me feel like, "Arey, main kyun nahi kar pa rahi hu? Why am I not as cool, awesome, calm, and collected as everyone around me?" And then I joined the film industry without realizing this either. So I felt like every other actor was better than me at handling fame, at handling shoots, at handling dialogues. It is only much later in life when I decided to get therapy specifically and focus on myself and talk through it that I realized I did have an anxiety disorder. And then I was able to work to build a set of tools. Some people want medication, and that's totally up to the person and the medical practitioner. But I personally didn't. So I, spent about 4.5 to 5 diligent years in therapy, once a week, every week, to talk through my fears and through my doubts and through my anxieties, to create a toolkit in which I can use and apply every day. And I had an anxiety and I realized when I spoke about this, I got so many messages saying, "Oh my God, I felt the same way. This is how I felt. This is what it felt like. I felt inadequate." Because we all know we live in a world where somebody's like, "This isn't good enough. Arey, main to isse acha karunga." So sub comment, everyone's ready to comment. But the journey of what we go through in self-doubt it's a human, affliction. And if you have anxiety or depression on top of that, which anyone can have, it's just like having, an issue with calcium deficiency, or like it's a chemical thing, So I think that was a challenge that I faced, and I was very embarrassed by it at first. But when I spoke about it and people resonated with it, I felt really, really liberated in myself, that I could talk about having talk therapy. I could talk about what I went through, and I could say that I'm kind of overcoming it, and I'm able to be positive.
Well, I think the most important part, or half the battle at least, is recognizing that you have that
Yeah.
illness, and that you can. And I'm so glad that you actually touched upon this, because mental health is something which is very real. The fact that mental well-being is such an important part, and especially a part of Indian culture as well. And I keep, whenever I get the opportunity, I keep telling them in schools and through the organization that mental well-being was such an integral part of our culture, but somehow we seem to forget. And now I think 1 out of every 7 students suffers from mental health issues, but finds it difficult in order to come out. So the fact that you've spoken about this once again and reiterated the fact that it's very important to talk about talk therapy, to talk about the fact that it's just another disease and it can be overcome. I'm so very grateful. So thanks for doing that, Shruti.
My pleasure.
No, genuinely, from the bottom of my heart, it's very, very. I didn't know what you were going to say on this question, and I'm very glad that you spoke about mental health. And I was like, damn, this is what's needed. But let me also ask you. You have been an icon in the field of music. You've seen music evolve, right? You've gone right from the early 2000s to now 2022, and the fact that how, from at one point in time, at least for somebody who listen to a lot of classical music, to a lot of lyrics, to now lyrics being made for Instagram. Do you think that there has been a generational shift and it is natural? Or do you think in some way we're losing a sense of, the creative space of music?
See, art changes, music changes, movies change, fashion changes. And one thing I promised myself is I never want to turn into one of those aunties who says, "Beta, हमारे generation में जो संगीत था, वो music था. ये क्या सुन रहे हो आप लोग? I was like, okay. When I used to encounter those people, I used to be like, promise myself I'll never be that, because the first job of an audience and an artist is to be open to experiences. If it was terrible, nobody would like it, right? There are things that nobody likes, which is why they don't exist. So if you compare, say, I love heavy metal and rock and roll. It's my first go-to music. If you compare, or you say Mohammed Rafi ke gaane, okay, if you compare that to original Indian classical, they'll say wo itna complicated tha, ye kya hai. If you compare now really beautiful jazz music to Mozart or Beethoven's pieces, it won't seem as elaborate. But it's not a competition of specificity and elaborateness. Music and art is about people feeling good when they listen to it, and those feelings changes as society changes from generation to generation. So I never look at it as a loss of something. Another thing I've always seen is things always repeat in cycles, just like fashion. You know, I remember when I first started, like in the movie business, I was like, I can't wait for 90s fashion to make a resurgence. And it took like 10-15 years, but it happened, you know, and now everyone's dressing like the 90s, you know, and I'm seeing like all these Spice Girl shoes and all, and I'm like, yeah, but it does come back with movies, comes back with music, comes back politically and socially as well. We see a shift in ideas, sometimes progressive, sometimes what some people consider regressive. So this is a part of everything, I think. So I don't have that opinion of we've lost something or we've lost a magic. Every generation takes what it needs.
And therefore, perhaps even politically, socially, in the world of fashion and in the world of music, and I'm so glad you touched upon all of this. I don't often get the opportunity of talking to people like when it comes to your walk of life, and if I'm very candid in telling you this, that is very rare that somebody touches upon the gamut of topics and then comes back to the point. So I'm very glad that you're making all of these points, and quite impressed, honestly, with the conversation in terms of what you're mentioning. Let me ask you the second last question from my end, which is you mentioned something which touched me, which is in the sense that it is necessary in order to evolve, and the evolution will come back in a way and will go back to essentially where it started from. And this also happens politically. The
Yes.
political climate in our country, and that in the space of music also, is fast evolving. And you see the positive, of course. And you say that you don't want to crack the dad jokes and you will not crack the dad jokes. But do you sometimes feel that perhaps in the race of doing things in a particular manner that we are losing the ethos, and not politically, but in terms of the music space, and just as an ecosystem as a whole, are we losing the ethos of where we started from in terms of a country, or do you think that it's okay? I'm just pressing you on this because you touched upon the subject. Yeah.
1 second. Alexa, stop. Alexa, stop. Sorry, my Alexa was just going off. Sorry. Yeah, there you go. Modern life.
Right.
I do. It's again subject to opinion. There are some things I kind of don't get, but I get that it's a reflection of art is always a reflection of something that is going on and something that exists because it needs to. This much I've understood for certain. Otherwise, wo hota hi nahi, you know. I feel that there are now different kinds of artists, and as much as people are saying, oh, there's social media everywhere and things are getting diluted, I see a very strong trend on the other side, especially with the younger generation of saying, okay, yeah, this is cool, everyone wants Jordans, everyone wants this, but I want to be different. There are people who want to go back to shooting on film and developing the film themselves. There are people who want to go back to going away from fast fashion and trendy stuff and recycling and reusing their garments. And this is people way younger than me. So there are people who are writing songs in the next generation of music that is fun and party and whatever. And then there's also like depth to what they're saying and their experience. And it's very resonant to people in their age, which is the purpose of art. So I feel that overall, the only thing I can say that I've noticed, and it's not age specific and it's not geographically specific, is people seem to be more quick to giving unsolicited advice and opinions, and people seem more quick to just like poop on other people and say mean things than they used to before, because we're behind screens, because there's no direct confrontation, and also because I feel there is an overarching sense of like, what do I do? What is my place in this world? So when you start questioning that, then you tend to try and ask other people those questions indirectly. So I feel that there's a sense of that. Again, there's a sense of people coming saying, no, I'm going to be that girl who wants to be this way. I want to dress this way. I want to appear this way. So right now we're in a flux in the world where both are really like, it's like two opposite poles of the magnet, and we are feeling that tension.
And for somebody who's stuck in a young body with an old soul, I'm feeling the conflict as well, in the sense that, like you said, there is that big question of individuality, and on the other hand, you've got people giving you unsolicited advice. So I can understand completely as to what you are trying to say. Let me go to the final question, which is a quick rapid fire.
Sure.
Okay, so let me just quickly ask you, this is the first thought that comes to your mind when I say the following words.
Okay.
Right? When I say India.
I would say history and hope.
History and hope. When I say she's a hero.
A song we're very proud of. Not one word, it's a whole sentence.
Yeah. And deservingly so. When I say black, what's the first word that comes to mind?
If you remove the A and you make it BLCK, then it's our production company. If you say black, I think it's my favorite color, and I think it has the potential to hold everything.
When I say music.
For me, I think it is a very, very, very strong vessel for emotion.
When I say youth.
When you say youth, I actually don't like that word. I didn't like it when I was the youth. And I just think, yeah, when they'd be like, all you youth people do like this only. So I used to be like, what is that? Is youth a bad word? Like, you know, they'll be like, they'll be like, all the youths are doing like this only. And I used to be like,
but listen, aren't you yet the youth? If you aren't the youth, you're going to make me feel actually like...
Okay, now I like the word. If I am the youth, I like it. I think youth, young, old, wise, all of these are very like, you know, it's totally dependent on the person and the situation. Yeah. I would say hope, future, again. Yeah.
And it's age agnostic. Youth should not be defined by age.
Exactly.
It should be age agnostic.
Yeah.
And as I grow older, even I feel the same thing. But I have to work on the dad jokes. But coming to the last one, and this is on the basis of this, will we give you a hamper? That hamper is just basically, we don't have fancy hampers, but on the basis of this, I'm going to say that how much you've actually liked or not liked this conversation.
Okay.
When I say I.I.M.U.N, what is the first thought that comes to your mind?
Grateful to have had this conversation, truly, and grateful to have interacted with. I'm always excited to meet new people, and then to therefore meet or virtually meet new people through them. It's such a blessing. So I'm really thankful.
And we're very thankful that there are people such as you who basically are spreading the message that she's a hero. Because at the end of the day, that's the message that we want to go, not just to the viewers who are watching, but to the larger community that will be watching this. But before I let you go, Shruti, you've been very patient and very kind. And am I back? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Was there a lag? Yes. No.
Yeah.
No, before Alex, I know Alex has already given you the signal, but can I, and you've been very patient, but can I, because there have been so many people who've been watching this live, can I have a couple of them, or at least one, ask you a question before you go?
Sure.
Super. So I'm trying to load the request to join, but there are so many that...
Maybe we could just read out their questions?
Can we just read out their questions? Can we get the questions?
That's less complicated. We can say their names and read out their questions. If you have any tagged questions like that you like.
Super. So there is a question that comes from Sanmi, who says, you have worked with, ma'am, you have worked with diverse set of actors, directors, and producers from the media industry, and all of them might not always agree with you. So how is it that you are able to adjust to with all of these people? And given the fact that we know that you put your point very candidly, how do you deal with them?
That's actually a really great question. So, when you go on set as an actor, you are within a box and everyone's given their box, right? Beyond a point, if there are things that should be discussed on set, if it's natural to collaboration, otherwise, I believe that these things should not be discussed on set. It's much better to, like, even in an office, don't do it at the meeting. Even if you're building a team together, don't do it in front of the whole team. If it's one specific person, you can pull aside and say, hey, do you think we can talk about it? A lot of the times you can agree to disagree and find another route. But I think it's also important for me to know my role as an actor and honor that first. Every day and every situation isn't about you, throwing your opinion around. It is about you doing your job to the best of your ability first. And sometimes that means not sharing your opinion on that day, but doing what is required of your job. That's how I've managed.
No, and that in itself is the small inspiring story that you've told us. And with that, I'm not going to hold you any longer because the questions don't end. And you've been very generous and very kind. You say that you are not a role model, but quite honestly, in every way, you've defined a new benchmark. You've essentially broken the stereotypes, and you are a hero for very many people. And therefore, thank you for inspiring very many young people. And there's this one line I must say, that there is a potential heroine in every woman, and that's the beautiful message that she has given us over the last 30 minutes. So thank you very much for joining in, and thank you very much for doing this, Shruti. Like I said, I enjoyed the conversation, both from an intellectual level, and that also from the point of view of what you were mentioning about the field of music. And that's a rare combination to have. So thank you very much for being.
Thank you so much for having me, and thank you for having these wonderful conversations. Thank you.